Hello, this is Dr. Jeremy St. John, and the purpose of this video is to demonstrate when and why and how you would use a relative reference versus an absolute reference, when you would use one and when you would use the other. So I have a simple little contrived commission rate calculator set up here. I've got, five salespeople, and here are their sales, and this could be weekly, monthly, doesn't matter. This is just a demonstration. And over in column C, I want to calculate their commission, what kind of commission I'm going to give them. At the top, I have the commission rate. Right now, I've got 10% in here. So there are no formulas in this table, but this is pretty common. I've got it organized by column. I've got the salespeople in column A, the sales in column B, and my formulas with the commission that I calculated are going to be in column C. And then I also have it organized by row, so I've got a different salesperson on each row. Organized very much like a table in a database, and that's because a lot of these Excel worksheets, they're being uploaded into a database or downloaded from a database, and so the organization is similar. So this is very common, that's the point. I'm going to go to cell C3 and I'm going to enter a formula in to calculate Johnny's commission, which is 10% of whatever he sells, and his sales are $3,500. All formulas begin with an equal sign, recall, equal B3, that's where the 3,500 is, times C1, 10%, and I would expect it to be 10% of 3,500, which is $350. And sure enough, it is. It works out fine. So a lot of times, this is a simple one, but a lot of times you'll have, instead of 5, 6 rows, you'll have 500 or more, and maybe I have my formulas over on the right-hand side in this column, just like this, and I want to copy it down across those 500, because I'm not going to sit here and type in the same formula 500 times. I want to copy it down. So to do that, you notice the cursor is a white cross. If I move it to the lower right-hand corner of that cell, it turns into a black cross, and that's called the fill handle, that little black square there. I can click on it, hold it down. I'm on a notebook, it's a little difficult. And then pull it down and release it. That copies the formula down. So when I release it, I get some really strange stuff here. The first one here for Sally, I would have expected 10% of $3,000 to be 300. Instead, I get this pound value exclamation mark. That means an error. And for Tom, 10% of 2,800 would have been $280. Well, he's real happy. 980,000. He's retiring now. That doesn't work. And Richard, I've got pound. Again, that's an error. This pound value is an error. And then for Caroline, the whole bunch of pound signs, that just means it's too big a number to fit in that cell, so it can't be displayed. So a whole bunch of pound signs, that's not necessarily an error. It just means it can't be displayed. Well, let's see what happened. In cell C3 for Johnny, I've got B3 times C1. That's what I wanted. I want Sally. It's good to think about what should be there before you look at it. For Sally in C4, I want 3,000 times 10%, which would be B4 times C1. So let's click on it. B4 times C2. Well, you can't multiply times the word commission, so no wonder it's an error. And in here for Tom, I would expect B5 times C1, and I've got B5 times C3. So the problem is with the reference to the commission rate. It needs to be C1 every time. I don't want that thing moving. I want the reference to the cells to be a relative reference. In other words, I want it to point to the left relative to where the formula is. So when I copy it down, it will still point relative to where the formula is on each row. So it'll reference the correct salesperson's sales. And relative is by default. You notice it changed from B3 to B4 to B5 to B6. I want that. The C1, that reference, I want to make it an absolute reference. I don't want it changing. The way to do that, I'm going to highlight up here in the formula bar, C1. You can highlight it in the cell. That's fine. You can make the changes in the formula bar or directly in the cell, either way. I want to make it an absolute reference, and then it won't move on me. I put a dollar sign before the column to fix it, and I put a dollar sign before the row to fix it, to make it an absolute reference. In this case, I use a shortcut key that's F4, and it's great. You hit F4 and it inserts the dollar signs for you, so you don't have to put the cursor in there and do that kind of stuff. I can keep hitting F4, it'll toggle between them. But F4, C1, I've got a dollar sign $C, dollar sign $1. That makes it an absolute reference. That's what I want. So I'll hit the enter key. It's still 350. Go grab the fill handle, copy it down, and now it works. So if you look, the B3, B4, B5, that is a relative address and it changes. But C1, the reference to C1 always stays C1, no matter where I copy that formula to. And that's because it's an absolute reference. And this is common. I want to talk about this too. This is very common. I could have put 10% directly in the formula and it would have calculated just fine. But in this case, commission rate is something that changes, and it can change often, maybe week to week, depending on what kind of manager I am. So maybe I decide, hey, they're not selling enough, so I'm going to punish them. I'm going to move it down to 8%. I don't want to go in there and change every single formula to 8% and possibly miss some and get errors. I just want to go up to cell C1 and change the 10% to 8, and that's fine. And then maybe that doesn't work, or maybe I'm a nicer manager and I think differently. I want to motivate them, so I want to increase the commission rate to increase sales. Well, I want to go up there, and if I want to change it to 12%, again, I want to change it in cell C1. I don't want to go into the formulas and change it, because that can result in errors. There can be formulas. It could be a very complex worksheet and have references that I miss, and that would result in errors. So this is very common. You have to know the difference between relative and absolute references, and you need to know when you use it and take advantage of that, so you don't have worksheets that you constantly have to go in and change the formulas all the time. No, I want to change it up here at the top. If it's something like days of the week, 7, that's not very likely to change. I doubt the president's going to change it to 8 days or 6 days. You can assume it won't happen. So in that case, I might use the actual number 7 in my formulas because I don't expect it to change. But anything that I expect to change, like commission rate, sales tax, or tax rate, or any of that stuff, I need to put it somewhere and then reference it with an absolute reference. So I hope that helps.